Okay, is this rolling? Hi. Why school is stupid and I hate it. Not just from a tired, angry teen's perspective. An activism research into the education system. The side effects on students' mental health is genuinely unacceptable, ranging from a school system that has not changed design in years and has caused very slow ideas to be implemented. Guidance counselors were a very recent concept during a quarantine shift, actually beforehand in 2019. Applied and academic classes only exist in Ontario. And the only other place where schools are even slightly different to a more mental health and child catering perspective, where they do the least amount of quizzes and tests and random homeworks, is in the Nordic country, which for some reason, even if their system is the best, has not been applied anywhere else. In other places which are less ideal, there is detention systems and much more that we will get into. Higher ups upon higher ups to report any misuse of staffing abilities. Examples are stated towards, during presentation, which will be done now. If you want to report any abuse of staff, you have to talk to who is above the staff, and that can take having to schedule a day within the week to even be able to talk to them. And if that doesn't go well with them, they don't hear your concerns, you have to go to the one above them. Basically, you have to go into the school district and the school boarding and then everything above that, and it's just a long process. It's a nightmare, and it is too much to mentally process for a teenager who just wants to skateboard with their friends after classes or have a good drink. And not only total disrespect and authorial abuse against the children attending the school, but as well also reports of any child abuse or bullying going unheard. Many times, if a student shows any form of anger, they are frowned upon, seen as crazy, or quickly dismissed. You have to talk with respect and calm at any point, even if the teacher is treating you like a child in return. If you do anything outside of what is demanded of you or does not suit the exact teacher's demands, if you even try to conversate suggestions on this or disagreements because it is not meeting your needs, you are yelled at, talked down upon, and it is very socially noticeable when you are being disapproved of or judged or disregarded or seen as silly or incompetent, or many things are said about you, or the system goes fast, and even when you are empathized with, there is little done, little change, and a lot can be forced on a lot of students, and the pressure and stress is just blamed on anything but school being a faulty system. Even if school is pushing too much onto others, it is overlooked, never looked into enough on how it has caused life-ruining effects. People wake up in their 30s like nightmares expecting to have to go to school. They sweat under the idea of not being perfection enough even outside of school once they have graduated. Why is this? Well, what if I told you the education system is modeled after oppression against natives and the tongues and cultures they were forced to learn? As you can see, I'll let you guys read the screen by yourself, but they were forced into many different cultures and standards, and they were forced to learn things, and systems and ideologies were forced upon them, and they had to be isolated and sit in places, and they were beat or isolated from each other when they were misbehaving. And if a student, in quotations, acted out in a native district school, they had severe punishments and they were forced to write things out. It was basically like a re-education system. And if anyone has looked into like the Uyghur situation or any other place, a re-education system is usually bad. But for some reason, it seems very easily designed after schools, just with a lot more abuse that has only calmed down in recent years. As 20 years ago, it was very normal for children to be hit in schools for misbehaving. Rulers were a very good example of this, and so on. Then capitalism came along. Eventually, this was seen as useful because then people started to use these modeled systems. The timelining exactly is not clear to me, as that was not part of the research I need to look into, but I can fact check this later if I ever have an assignment in the future for it. Eventually, this was seen as useful. So plumbers, mathematicians, other teachers were forced into these heavy systems of sciences and maths and all of this. And while this is all very wonderful and delightful to learn, it is not everyone's pursuit, it's not everyone's future. And half of the time, 50% of what, not 50%, I'm not going to make up a random estimate or percentage, but a lot of what is taught in schools ends up wasting many people's time. They're forced to learn it, and if they fail, they have to be held back to learn it again. And if they do not fail and they graduate, sometimes they never even use this. Much of the information you learn, you actually end up forgetting. But as you can see, they are simply churning out adulthoods in workforces kind of environment or setting. In an academic feature, it's just they want workers, and they are starting as young as possible. Capitalism has been pushed onto children since the very beginning. This is not to say that communist places have not also done this. China, being a mixed system of capitalism and communism, is forcing communism, and like I said, education camps, and every country has their history of having biased information and much more in what they're trying to get out of children they are sending into being adults in the future. So, likewise stated, they are being forced to follow certain curriculums or pathways to work for other governments, like building resumes to work at this high standard and this very bullshit minimum wage. Our current results. Do you ever notice how history is only taught a certain way in different schools? How everyone's thinking has to follow a specific format? The lack of creativity over bounds of authority has taken over. Where do you think this all comes from? Are we allowed to talk back or question authority? What does this teach us that we don't learn much more than usefully at home? Of course, you'll use this when older, said only teachers teaching this for most of their lives to students who have to memorize their classes plus many others in only a few months, then move on quickly, then forget it as an adult. It's mandatory for the credits, and popular rich-born kids with privilege could make our average without even going to school. More classes need to be pursued as optional. You don't actually need the amount of math or other subjects you're being fed. Several teachers don't even remember what you're being taught. Shaming people for future salaries that aren't even fair and meant to create more poor people to use as factory workers over concepts nobody cared about. Did anyone even know there was an outrage against changing math 50 years ago because of war? Let it be understood you are only truly learning when you dig into the information outside of classes. I wonder why. More classes need to prioritize an optional build for students who will actually use that class. There shouldn't be so many things like math and science and literature in all these topics that will not matter when we need to do things like learn how to pay taxes or learn how to, start doing baking. Like, baking is optional, art is optional, music is optional. People who want to pursue that full time will not get the experience of how much math is pushed on them. People are more celebrated for learning math or passing in math classes while nobody cares if you fail in art. There is a biased prioritization of what classes are important, and that is not okay for people who are going to learn useless information and fail all that information trying to go to things that they are better at. That shouldn't happen. Native children abused in schools and not reported is not a reason to keep doing this to us too. You can understand how this is self-explanatory. We shouldn't have to fear being disrespected by everyone walking to class or through hallways. Just because you have mommy or daddy issues does not mean that I want that put onto me when I'm going through hallways. I do not want to be bullied for being different than other students. And just because a teacher has authority and has more years than us and has like a degree and is successful does not mean that they need to put their issues or how much better they think they are on a literal child who just wants to get through a system they did not ask to be a part of. The attendance system is also albiest. This goes for burnout kids, those with mental health symptoms, breakdown days, and depression days who need time off. People have call into work sick days, etc., etc. People have weekends off and can prioritize differently. Why can't we have that? We can, but it's not seen as the right way to go about things, and I wonder why. Learn your benefits of a better school system. Hold children responsible and keep bigotry out of learning environments. Stop using oppressive environments to learn and use a more open system. Stress-free school and better constructed classes of better use than children slaves equals better results than this. We don't need people having higher suicide rates, burnouts, or dropouts of high school being overlooked and seen as a criticism on them rather than how the school system has failed us and stressed out people all over the world. Anyways, this has been my presentation. Thank you for watching. That was 10 minutes and a few extra seconds.